Welcome to Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Line-Miller, your host. Thank you to our sponsor, Farm to Plate. They are creating tomorrow's food business ecosystem today, and you can find out more at farmtoplate.io. We have a very seasoned professional with us today, Juergen Keil. He is the Global Director of Supply Chain Strategy for Cargill's food and bioindustrial business. Welcome to the podcast, Juergen.
Yeah, welcome, Pam. Nice to be here.
Thank you for being with us. I am so excited. First of all, I would love to talk about Cargill. Cargill's a huge company. Can you share with us a little bit about what you do there?
Yeah. So I work for the Cargill food and bio business. So Cargill has 5 enterprises, and I'm engaged basically in bringing food ingredients and solutions and bioindustrial bio-based products into the globe. And I'm responsible for supply chain strategy, which means we look at capabilities, how to improve the network and the supply chain capabilities of this system.
Yeah, and I'm excited to dive into that a little bit later in our interview. But Cargill you have some fun facts about Cargill that you want to just share. I would love to share that with our audience if you have them handy.
Yeah, exactly. So just in a very much a nutshell, I mean, I give you a couple of numbers, right?
Yeah.
The first fact is Cargill is the biggest US family-owned business. So I think that is for people to know. It's a global business, obviously, and we do have 160,000 employees. And yesterday was the Super Bowl, right? It's 2.5 the size of the Super Bowl, which fit in there. So it's quite a bit, over 170 billion revenue.
We do have a worldwide audience who really would appreciate that perspective because Cargill has such a large worldwide footprint.
And I have 2 really fun facts. Maybe I want to share one of them because we recently have publicized that, right? So we are a big partner to McDonald's, and we have delivered them in the last year 2 billion eggs in the US, which are cage-free, which has been a huge achievement because 10 years ago there was no cage-free eggs. But 2 billion means as well that 6 eggs per person in the US have eaten. So everybody in the US has eaten 6 eggs on average. I'm not sure if you are one of them or not, but I think it tells you the size and the span of Cargill in that context.
Yes, those are fun facts. Yes, I have eaten 6 eggs.
Yeah, exactly.
I think maybe we're big egg eaters here in the US. Maybe a lot of us are.
Yeah.
But you bring a broad professional experience to your role at Cargill. Can you give us a little bit of perspective there before we jump into some of the items that you're working on now?
Yeah, exactly. So from a personal perspective, I worked 30 years in egg and food, right? Over 30 years. I love this field. So I worked in different value chains, in cocoa and chocolate, vegetable oils, and others, right? So I have very far and broad experience across global foods. And at the same time, I worked at supply chain management, sustainability leadership, general management, commodity risk trading, and so forth. So I hope this expertise can bring in some interesting insights for your audience.
Well, I think you do bring such a seasoned perspective on ag food. Really, you have such a 30-year history in all of that. So where should we start? I mean, I know you're big into sustainability at Cargill. I mean, would you like to share some of the initiatives that are happening? Maybe some numbers?
Exactly. I love to do that, right? And I start with the vision of Cargill because I think that sets the context for what we're actually doing on the ground. So Cargill wants to nourish the world in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way. You already see back the world of sustainability, and it's a bold statement, and I think we're also living up to that statement. And how I reflect on this in the last 30 years. Of course, we are, kind of the biggest task of the food system is to feed people, right? So they have basic food. On the other hand, of course, we have a growing responsibility in creating a food system which is better for the globe, right? At the same time.
Yes.
And that is in principle a global ambition. And as we move through this, of course, we have been having passion for sustainability already over the last 15 or 20 years. But I think the sheer size and magnitude, what impact Cargill wants to have on the globe, that is really something which has drastically been changing over the last years.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you have a focus on not only providing good food and good products for the consumers, but also being responsible in the area of sustainability.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
for sure. And how that manifests itself as well, right? We have a global office of sustainability in our executive team. You maybe also know there was of course the summit in Dubai where people talked about how are they going to solve the future
Yeah.
issues of the globe in CO2.
Was that the COP28 just
Yes, the
recently?
COP28, and yeah, we have been very present in that.
Okay.
And as well, I mean, as food and ag is a key topic, right, in that summit as well, because the world ag and food is contributing 25 to 30% of the carbon emissions of the world, which from my perspective is very counterintuitive because we are growing plants and actually absorbing CO2 into plants and the soil. Hence, I do believe that actually soil and changing farming practices can actually be a tremendous solution for the planet in the future. And that's how Cargill sees it as well.
Okay. And is that something that Cargill is doing work in, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge to start, there's huge activity in all the different supply chains we're acting in on sustainability. Virtually in every business we are running, there's work in that area. And how I would say this, and I'm reflecting back on 15 years or so working on sustainability leadership in my past roles, where we have developed for customers certified sustainable supply chain. So I've been involved in developing sustainable rapeseed oil for Unilever 15 years ago, right? That's a long time ago. However, I think the drive for this, right, which was maybe a little bit more smaller, more regional, but that same drive has manifolded itself into something where we would say, hey, we want to be responsible, of course, in every supply chain we are acting in. We want to improve the CO2 footprint of our Scope 3 supply chain. We want to reduce this by 30% by 2030.
30% by 2030. And I think that the whole supply chain, you've been working on it for years and years, and industry has been aware of supply chain. But I think we as consumers, those that are listening and watching us, that are just the average person that maybe buys your end product, we weren't aware of supply chain necessarily, really, until the pandemic.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
A big issue. There were problems. We couldn't get our products. Then we're like, why is that? Oh, there are supply chain. Then we had to dive into supply chain and what that is. So some explanation there, is really helpful. The fact that you've been working on it for so many years, but really from where things are grown to how they get to
exactly. So, I mean, when we talk about supply chain, there are different definitions, right? But when I talk about an agriculture supply chain and the food supply chain, it normally starts, with all the steps from the initial growing of a good, right? And I make the example of cocoa and chocolate because I'm working very deeply in that system, in order to, buy it from the farmers, bring it to a storage location, ship it, and process these products for the end markets and sell it to B2B customers or to final customers. And really this whole chain, which is actually not a chain but a system, by the way, to really manage that from end to end in a physical way, financially, the data, right, to make sure the customer, you, me, are happy in the end of the day with the product they're buying. Plus, of course, we'd like to improve the way we manage this also from a CO2 or decarbonization perspective. And that's where we also put a lot of emphasis on of course, in our own operations, we control this, right? So we can have a direct control on what electricity we buy and so forth, but indirectly as well in the agricultural supply chains. How can we make sure we incentivize the system that, coming back to decarbonization, that farmers maybe change their practices to a way which is more resilient and consumes less CO2.
Well, I think as technology moves forward, we learn more and more about how we can be more sustainable.
Yeah.
I think part of it, right? There wasn't a lot of, 30 years ago, sustainability wasn't really a common everyday term,
Yeah.
and now it is. So we're starting to realize the impact of certain processes or certain activities that we had in the food business, right, Juergen?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the realizations is as well, if you look at CO2 footprints right across the chain, that a lot of this, a lot of the impact is in the initial primary processing of these chains as well, right? And what we have tried to do is really set up, and that's one of the examples I really want to highlight. And I think regenerative agriculture is kind of a buzzword as we speak, but also for Cargill, we're having huge programs in that area. And what it does, it really links incentives to farmers, right? So we really pay the farmers to have better practices, and in doing that, because I mean, it's not, the farmer has been paid for the product, right? But we need to pay the farmer also, if you will, for the environmental service they provide if they change their practices. There's a huge program, it's called Regen Connect, where we really try to verify, on the one hand, with technology, the impact of farming changes in order to able to provide incentives in terms of money to customers to actually change. And we do believe, carbon has a price. If we can translate it through the chain, there will be change. So.
Very nice. So is there an education arm happening there to help the farmers know what they need to do to improve their farming practices, and what kind of things are you measuring?
Sure. So I mean, in this program, right? I mean, the practices we are suggesting is they're not really new to farming, right? But we know they have a very big impact. So if a farmer changes the way they farm their field, and you know what tillage is, right? I mean, if you go through a field, you basically turn the air around. That releases a lot of CO2. And you can have practices which is reducing this. And by the way, you can measure this with satellites if the farmer has done it, yes or no. And that's the way you basically verify what's happening on the farm, because we cannot put a person on the farm and check the farmer if he done it too expensive and strange. But you can verify with satellite image and very scientific calculation methods if it actually happened. So you can actually link this back with the data, a big data machine, back to the farmer. So it's really fascinating. It's very fascinating things. And we have 1 million acres now on this program in the US. We expanded this as well to Europe and other places. Ambition is 10 million. Other people do it as well. And I'm very excited. I mean, in agriculture, if you can do this well, if you pay the farmer and for that service, we save CO2, we have more resilient supply chains. It's a huge win-win. It's very exciting, also from my historical context, so to say.
Well, to see some things come to fruition that you've been focused on is really exciting. 1 million acres is a great accomplishment. 10 million is a very lofty goal, but certainly achievable, especially as you go worldwide. And because we love to talk about technology and how it's impacting the food industry, how it's being used for good in the food industry. And this is a great example of that, Juergen. Yeah.
No, it's we could have the whole podcast covered on the back end of technology, but it's something, if you start talking, it's super exciting, and there's a lot of people trying to, how can we measure this better, because it needs to be verifiable. So that will just grow as we move forward. I'm quite convinced of that.
Yeah, the leverage that's available because you can use technology, like you said, it's not practical to have feet on the ground, an actual person going and observing or measuring individually with 1 million acres, and certainly not 10 million. And the ability to leverage technology to do that, I'm excited with you. What other initiatives do you have going, or what else would you like to share with us about?
So I also, something very close to my heart, because this was in the cocoa business where I previously worked, is that we really launched the first zero emission electrical barge. And we announced this last year. And I do believe barging wouldn't be the first place you would think about electrifying, right? I mean, we all know electrifying cars. We know that trucks is a little bit more complicated because, yeah, batteries and the size, and that is the next one. But we found a very good use case to transport, in that case, cocoa beans within the ranges of a harbor with an electrical barging system.
That's innovative.
Yeah, exactly. And how this came, right? I mean, and it's really about the entrepreneurial approach of also people we have in our company, right? And to explain this, we have a warehouse of cocoa beans in the harbor. The beans come from Africa, and they're different warehouses and they are factories, right? And the factories need to be fed with cocoa beans, which is like big coffee beans, brown coffee beans, if you will. And they need to be transported from the warehouse into the factory. And as we were end of lifetime in our fuel equipment, right? We looked at alternatives when we came back with a very innovative barging operations, which suggested maybe we can do this electric. And with the harbor, with the warehouse, with that partner, with our, with the whole mass of our teams, we actually brought this into life. And there's really thousands of tons going on a daily, kind of on a daily basis, back and forth in the harbor. And it works because it goes back and forth and you have time to reload.
Okay.
And you have a barge and you don't hear anything, right? It's totally silent, right? It's quite interesting, and we do believe that outside also the food system in harbors, this inner harbor traffic, right? It is a reusable concept, because a container ship you cannot load in the middle of the ocean, right? But
Right.
you can have a barge in the harbor. You can electric, like at home or whatever. You put a plug basically into that system. And this is also the bottom-up drive, right? We have in the company top-down goals, big goals, but you need entrepreneurial teams to also think about things. Nobody thought about that first. Nobody asked them to do this, right? Top-down. No, we found people to do this, and you can just be proud of the people who actually initiated that. So that's
And let's talk about that for just a second, because I think that is a really genius idea to give employees of Cargill the opportunity to implement their entrepreneurial ideas. Maybe not, they're outside of what the norm is of what has traditionally been done, but they're the ones that are there in the harbor moving the beans and the opportunity to do things differently and better. For Cargill to support that.
Yeah, and you have to let the people think, right? And the people on the ground, they know the best how to implement this as well. And but if you give that freedom, and sometimes a lot of magic happens. And we know on sustainability, people are very motivated, right? So it's a topic everyone want to be part of this, and you don't have to ask people to do it; they want to do it, right? There's an intrinsic motivation a lot of the times in that space, and you cannot imagine how proud people were, right? If that really if a big, these are not small things, right? It's always scale, right? I mean, this is not like a little, electric bike. I mean, this is electric barge, right? And if that comes true, then you can see it, you can go there, and it's like, wow. This is something different, right? So, and that is the nice thing on supply chain. We talked about supply chain management. We're moving real things, right? This is something which is really happening on a very large scale.
Well, and let's come back to supply chain management. I just want to make a point about employee and company culture here, really impacting me as we're having this conversation, Juergen, because it's a challenge today. A lot of companies are talking about, employees, and they're not motivated, and maybe they're just leaving for, another, what they think is a better opportunity. But Cargill is giving their employees that love of the work they do, and they're able to bring their personal mission into work they do. Then that changes the whole culture and how they approach their work. It's not just a job. They're actually making a positive impact in an area that's meaningful to them. I don't think we should overlook that from Cargill's perspective. I think that's
No, but to be
yeah.
very frank, I mean, it's one of the reasons I stayed a long time, right? Because
Okay.
15 years ago, I could be part of a sustainable rapeseed oil or CO2 reduction perspective. And that was something which we created with a team, with the help, management created. We can get the resources and you need to have a good business case, right? Obviously, but then you have the ability sometimes to create things like that.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of fun.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because
Yeah.
that hopefully will stand as a model for other people that are listening to us to, put the people to work, essentially coming up with the innovative changes in operations that they see because they're doing it every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Management that might not be on the scene or at the manufacturing site or involved in moving the beans from the harbor to the warehouse, for
Exactly.
example. That's really exciting. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that. I
Yeah.
love that. Other things in sustainability or technology or supply chain, you have such a wealth of
No, but I wanted to turn it a little bit to supply chain management, right? That is the area, of course, I'm currently very busy with, so to say, to building a kind of supply chain management capability for the company as we move forward. I think you mentioned it before. COVID was also kind of a trigger moment where people realized, the food is or anything is not just flying, on our tables. There's actually a supply chain, right, necessary, to take it through all the steps towards the table where you can eat this. And one of the things that I don't think we should take this for granted. It is something, let's say, as a society and overall, we also need to continue working on, as we have 2 billion more people probably in 2050, right? We need to create a system which actually can manage that.
Yeah. And is there anything else you'd like to share in the area of the supply chain management or some of the initiatives you're undertaking?
Yeah.
I mean, you shared some really great things, but
yeah. No, there's one thing I still want to say, one thing around COVID and the resilience of the food supply chain. And as you said, I mean, there's the people on the ground actually have done it, right? The reason why you had food on the ground is that people in the factories and the people in the transportation and the people in our supply chain departments that have actually done their work. And a lot of times people were sick, and they've done this with very few people providing that. So that's something I'm still one of the things I'm super proud of that how the teams have done it. Having said that, it also showed gaps, right? We said, hey, the visibility of the supply chain, pieces by pieces, it's pretty okay. However, I mean, I think that is something we can do better, and we also have to be better prepared with scenarios against a volatile environment, right? And what we can state today, I mean, and also after COVID, there was enough disruptions, geopolitical problems that we have to assume. I mean, we have to navigate in the future also against this volatility of the world and really be able to better management, because the business will just grow, the amount of people will just grow, and we have to get ahead around that.
yeah, so
yeah.
it's not staying the same is what
Yeah.
I'm hearing. And you have to be adaptable to the
Yeah.
changes that are happening across the world and in the population.
No, exactly. And that's one capability I really want to share, because it fits directly into that space. It's a capability which we call supply chain design and optimization. And what it in principle does is you create digital models of your supply chain. And with that, you can optimize, run scenarios, increase customer service with those scenarios. And why do we need that as Cargill, but maybe also interesting for others? That of course the business I'm responsible for is one of the most extensive food networks of the globe, right? So what that means, we're dealing with hundreds of locations, right? May it be production facilities, warehouses, tolling operations. We deal with 10,000s of locations which ship. products to. We deal with thousands of products. You can imagine it's billions of turnover and a lot of cost associated with that. And it's simply not overseeable for a human mind to manage that without a system. It's not possible, right? Because there's so many connections, and you cannot, if you push the button here, you cannot necessarily predict what's happening at the end of the chain. And also Excel, which is also not a solution, right? It's too complex in that sense. Yeah, we developed that approach for 5 years ago. I'm basically driving the rollout of the capabilities for the food and bio, but it's a Cargill-wide program. So there's a central team. They selected a nice tooling. There's a central team, which are really the technical experts, the data experts, and really know the process about this tooling. And what we do is basically, leveraging this team, working with the business, and lots of data to create a tooling to, step for step, with the ambition to model the majority of our company with this. And we made a lot of progress modeling that with a lot of benefits for the company, but also for our customers.
Right.
And for sustainability, by the way, as well, because you can model this.
Yes, and then you can see where the gaps are, or where there's opportunities for you to make some changes that would have a positive impact. But like you said, the human mind can't even conceive of all this. So I imagine some of the capabilities of artificial intelligence to do some predictive information based on the data, the analytics you're able to pull up, and to massage that data and help perceived outcomes.
And behind this tool, I mean, there's enormous mathematical computation power, right? I mean, it's very interesting, and with the current computing power, right, the amount of iteration a system can take, and what it can actually do. I mean, it's out of our brain. We cannot actually grasp that, right? So it's very interesting, but you still need a human, right? Because we need to interpret. And we basically need to see, in a typical example, Asia is growing, right? We want to maybe distribute or produce in Asia, for example, right? A typical use case, generically, right? Because I cannot talk about, stuff we are doing on strategy modeling, to say, hey, how should it flow in the future? Cocoa products, for example. Where should they come from? How should they be produced? Where should they be stored? And looking 5 years out, 10 years out, and saying, hey, if the demand goes like this, that's how it should look like. And then making choices, right? Sometimes also fixed choices on assets or on storage locations, stuff like that. I mean, it's big time. It's very interesting. And we do know that, we developed this capability well. So we won a prize for that. There was an external kind of recognition for that. And kind of in peers, we know we're doing well in the capability.
Well, congratulations, and what a great application for technology in the food industry. That's an excellent application, and I know it's a very, very big investment on Cargill's point in money, resources, people, but hopefully that's going to help moving forward to make better decisions and make better business decisions, because you can quantify what's happening and what things might look like based on different variables changing.
Yeah, exactly. And we have the business case, right? I mean, it is a big investment, but we also, we're getting the value out, right? Which is always in digital investments, sometimes not the most easy case, right? To really take revenue to this, and it's a journey, right? In this tooling, it doesn't come by itself.
That's right.
It's hard work by multiple people. It's always cross-functional as well, and you need the people to make sense out of the numbers, so to say.
Absolutely. Well, so many great initiatives going on at Cargill, and I'm glad they've got a man with your background and experience and insight to be able to oversee this huge section. What does the future look like? What do you think is next for Cargill and moving forward? Anything?
No, but I think
what you already shared.
No, but I think, I mean, if let's say on the future of carbon decarbonization, right? I hope that really that we can scale change of agricultural practice in that sense, but through the connection of the carbon market to farmers, right? I mean, that is really something new, right? So if you can get that change established, that would be great. Another one is really right. Digitalization in ag and food, right? I mean, there's Amazon, right? I mean, we always reference that, right? But egg and food, right? I mean, the future is, kind of a way more, call it digitalized food and egg system, and exploiting that for the customers, for sustainability, and having all these insights there. And the digital revolution, of course, it's for agriculture as well, and it's simply amazing what you can do with data, what you can measure, and how you can take this to the next level. And of
Yeah,
course, everybody talks about AI and what it means. Of course, that is also something which we are exploring in different areas. But I
sure.
always suggest to people explore it yourself in ChatGPT and trying to get your feet on the ground, and then we talk. We talk further. But it's certainly something where we also take into.
Well, great. Thank you so much for sharing all these initiatives, a lot about what Cargill is doing in the areas of sustainability, taking advantage of technology,
Yeah.
and of course, your personal expertise that you bring to what you're doing. Maybe we'll have you back in a couple of years to give us an update on some of the initiatives and what's happening. So it sounds like you're well on your way to making some great impacts in the food industry.
Yes, that's what we hope for. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. If
Yeah.
you enjoyed this interview with Juergen and would like to hear more or have some comments for us, please subscribe and leave us a comment. We do read and answer all of them. Thanks for being with us. Until next week, I'm Pam Line-Miller.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.